What's up, fantasy nerds? Welcome back to another episode of the Inking Out Loud podcast. I'm your host, Rob Santos, and I'm joined, as I always am, by my co-host, Drew McCaffrey.
How's it going, everybody?
And today, Drew and I are wrapping up our latest installment of... I'm going to start that again. Fuck, our latest installment. So today, Drew and I are wrapping up the latest installment of our Katie Martine's Tix Kalan series with the second half of A Desolation Called Peace. Drew, we picked up at chapter 10 and we continued on right through the end of the book. So let's get that weekly recap, dude. Take it off.
Yeah. Things hit the ground running in the second half of this book, beginning with Mahit and 3 Seagrass heading down to the sandy Paloa 2 to meet with the aliens for the first time. After a brief but hot and dehydrating and tiring dialogue, the two return to Wait for the Wheel, where they have sex. Meanwhile, events are beginning to move quickly. The dead alien body aboard the Wait for the Wheel spreads a fungal infection, which kills the medical technician inspecting it. 20 Cicada quarantines himself after coming into contact with it as well. Back in the city, 8 Antidote finds himself ever closer to the center of things, as he attends war meetings and ingratiates himself with 3 Azimuth, the Minister of War. 8 Antidote, attempting to learn more about 3 Seagrass and Mahit, leaves the palace and heads to the spaceport. While there, he sees a courier station, but cannot meet with anyone because a trail is derailed and the place is evacuated. He suspects a bombing, especially after 5 Agate shows up to take him back to the palace. Mahit and 3 Seagrass, along with a now-cleared 20 Cicada, head back down for another round of negotiations. While there, Mahit and Reed are recalled to Wait for the Wheel as 8 Antidote has questions for them. With Swarm carrying on negotiations with the aliens, the answers 8 Antidote gets help him begin putting the puzzle together. He realizes the aliens are a collective consciousness. At the same time, 9 Hibiscus's fleet discovers a populated system, perhaps one of the homes of the aliens. She tries to stall on making a decision of whether or not to bomb and irradiate the planet, but 16 Moonrise also learns of the planet. She puts her fleet in motion, which spurs the aliens into an all-out attack on portions of the fleet and even LaSalle Station. 8 Antidote begs 19 Ads not to command the bombing of the planet, as 3 Azimuth wants, but she gives the order anyway. With the clock ticking, Hewer hatches a plan to intercept the message and send one of his own. He commandeers a shard pilot and, using the shard trick, connects with the courier and stops the Emperor's command. His own order, stopping the bombing, finds its way to Wait for the Wheel. 16 Moonrise and her legion ignore the order, however, as Mahit is confronted by Darj Tarats and Swarm struggles with the decision to ingest the alien fungi. In a last-ditch effort, he does, and convinces the alien consciousness to halt attacks. 9 Hibiscus makes a deal with the aliens to stop the 24th Legion and 16 Moonrise, preventing the war from spiraling out of control. 8 Antidote and 19 Ads discuss his decision to countermand her, and she is proud of him. Mahit is banished from LaSalle Station for good, and 3 Seagrass offers her home in the Jewel of the World as somewhere for Mahit to go. Mahit declines, but promises to stay in touch. 9 Hibiscus, bereft of her adjutant, is left to take care of 20 Cicada's plants and one adorable little black kitten. And in the end, it is 20 Cicada, better and more appropriately known as Swarm, who spearheads the newly opened channel of communication with the aliens, attempting to teach them language and understanding of humanity.
Okay. So, jumping into style. Should I start? Shall you start?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
You can start.
I'm going to begin by saying that for this episode, being, for, as I said, A Desolation Called Peace, I think I'm going to just cede any claim to be reviewing this in a completely objective manner, and the reason for this is because of how little I enjoyed the book, but also taking into account that I know our Katie Martine is an incredible writer. The juxtaposition between those two sentiments, that's going to be why I'm taking a bit of a further step back today. I'm going to let you, Drew, as you deserve, to do the heavy lifting for the literary analysis part of things. I'm just going to be giving subjective feedback, what kind of book this was for me, as somebody who reads and enjoys the kind of books that I normally do. So, too long didn't listen. This book was torture for me to get through. But I understand and I acknowledge that it is a great book. You just got to be into this kind of thing, and I'm just not.
Yeah, I find that really interesting that you didn't like this book as much, even as much as A Memory Called Empire.
Yeah.
Because A Memory Called Empire was pretty thoroughly concerned with politics. And that's not to say that this book isn't concerned with politics, but it is also a war story. And what I appreciate about it is that it doesn't just throw you into the violence of war, but takes into account all the aspects of what goes into a war, what is going on back home during a war, why is a war happening, what are the motivations of the people on the front lines. I brought up in our first episode how I thought this book was all about borders and boundaries, and that is very much the case. Now that you've read the whole book and we can talk about the whole book, it is about that event horizon in a lot of ways. It's the choice to put yourself into a new situation. It's the choice to learn something new. When I talked about those boundaries in the first episode, I talked a lot about the relationship between Mahit and Three Seagrass, and I talked about the borders of the empire, the expanding empire, and the dangers beyond those borders. And here, in the second half of the book, what we get into is a lot more of internal boundaries. It's Swarm deciding to step off the edge and take a chance at crossing that boundary of intelligence and psychology to learn and engage with the aliens. It's about 8 Antidote making that choice to go back to the starport, to leave the boundaries of the palace, to leave his comfort zone. His choice to step over the previous bounds he'd lived in and countermand the Emperor herself. It's his choice to push the boundaries of what he's allowed to do. He finally makes use and discovers how many clearances he has, and he penetrates straight through all of these boundaries in the palace, straight to 19 Ads' quarters. There's so many boundaries and borders explored and crossed in the second half of this book. And I think it's just brilliant on Martine's part here, how she set up a lot of external boundaries for characters in the first half. And then in the second half, she had them deal with those boundaries while also dealing with expanding their own horizons internally. It's just this all-encompassing theme woven seamlessly together.
I can't say I picked up on any of that, and I have to take that step back and try and look at why. I think this book is just over my head. I really do, in a large part. That's probably in large part why I didn't enjoy it. And it hurts me to say that because I know, Drew, how much you love this book.
Yeah.
And I've been hearing you and I've been hearing many others glow about this series and about Arcady Martine for months now. And I get that she's a really, really talented writer. I don't have the tools to appreciate how brilliant she really is. Like, I just don't know what else to say. For me, it felt like this entire book was politics and intrigue and travel and culture shock. And I've been very vocal about this in the past, including on our last episode. There's no need to rehash this point too egregiously. I just don't enjoy politics. Politics really bore me. And in abundance, it kind of infuriates me. I'm more of an action and spectacle kind of guy. Call it simple, that may be it. There is pretty much zero action of any kind in this book. There was some, but there was also a span of about 300 pages across the middle huge section of this book where the most exciting thing to happen for me was 2 main characters having their first face-to-face conversation with the aliens. And there was 150 pages on either side of that scene where not a lot really happened that really interested me. So it was tough to get through for me.
Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, you're right in that there isn't a whole lot of like action. Like, our main characters are not fighting. There's a war going on around them.
There's no assassination attempt. There's no chase. There's no
the closest is when 8 Antidote uses the shard trick, and he experiences.
Right, he experiences the deaths and everything that's happening and what they're really going through on all ends of this conflict in the moment as it's happening. And I was totally into it in that moment as well. And these aliens, I wanted so badly to know more about these aliens. I was so on board for these aliens. They are so creepy. They are so cool. Yeah. There's like the world building that Martine, even I can see how great her world building is. Like, I wanted more of that side of things. I wanted to be stuck in 3 Seagrass's head less, and in Mahit's head less, and I wanted to be with 8 Antidote a little more, 9 Hibiscus a little more, and I wanted a lot more confrontation with these aliens more than we got. But it was about what I was expecting, and partly because I was expecting that, I was, kind of setting myself up for failure.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I wanted to talk, my other kind of, or one of my other main style points is the use of point of view here. Okay. And, we talked a lot about how, in our first episode, how there are more points of view. We have more major point of view characters in this. But I only really mentioned it in the first half, and I didn't focus on it too much. What I think the most incredible part of this book is the alien points of view.
Oh my god, they were cool.
How she manages to make English words feel alien. How she manages to get across the point that they don't think in language, even though she's telling us in language.
She has no choice, yeah.
It's one of the more ambitious and, at least in my mind, demanding things I've ever seen an author attempt. And I think she really pulled it off. Like, just going to the end, the postlude. To think as a person and to not think language. To think fractal scatter song, the shape of an unfamiliar body, an inclusion like a garnet in the matrix of a stone. Stone, still, but otherwise, crystalline and complete. Inside that crystal language, like the mouth cries of unpersons but made singable, lodges and reverberates, isolated until necessary. We, singing all through us, singing harmonic variants, vibration on an almost interfering frequency. This body, that body. This body had a call sign when it wasn't a person, and it is not the only one. This body was called Leap, and that body Gray Pattern. This body Sweetling, and that body cleverer than littermates. And so, this new body, singing in the we, called Swarm, which is a laughing name now. Like, all of those words are English and fairly common. She has an elevated vocabulary, but not outrageous.
She doesn't always need. Yeah, exactly. She knows when she should apply it.
But when put in the sequence, and with these strange and meandering sentence structures, it's easy to get caught up in reading the words and not getting the meaning of them because they're arranged in an unfamiliar way. And I can't even begin to fathom how this author's mind works to think, to create these sentences.
Yeah, I could read an entire book of this. I would love an entire book of this. Again, with these aliens, I'm so fascinated by them. We kept going back into 3 Seagrass. It was 3 Seagrass it was for me. I hated being in her head this time around. I loved 3 Seagrass in A Memory Called Empire. Yeah. I remember glowing about her in that episode, I think. This one, she frustrated me. I was in her head for too long, I think.
Huh.
But
Okay.
yeah, that postlude, I came across that. I was paying attention to see how this may or may not have been changed or influenced by Swarm by 20 Cicada. And then when they acknowledged him at the end in the laughing name now, I was laughing about the laughing name at that point. I was like, oh, that was a nice touch.
Yeah.
There were things that I did very, very much enjoy in this book, and I will definitely be going over each and every one of them in detail.
Yeah. And so I wanted to just touch on my last style point, and that's, what did you think of the epigraphs in this book?
The epigraphs.
Mm-hmm.
They added so much. I think they almost added too much to the world building. I think that's how I feel about them. They were interesting if you're into that kind of thing. Again, I'm really, really dancing around a lot of lines here. I don't want to be too harsh. I didn't care for them too much, but they were amazing world building tools. They may have been the best world building epigraphs I've seen.
So the epigraphs are my main criticism of this book.
Okay.
Not that they were bad, and
There didn't seem to be much direction for them, in my opinion.
like they very often informed the chapter to come, or gave us added context for what we just read. But for me, I was like the opposite of Rob. I was so gripped by the story. This just took hold of me and dragged me along. And I'd get to the end of a chapter, and like all good chapter work, you're left, on tenterhooks. You're excited to find out what happens next at the end of a chapter, and then I turn the page and I see a giant block of text that's like some manual or a public service announcement or something like that, and I'm like, I don't care. I want to get back to the story. And so I felt, but I knew I couldn't just skip the epigraphs because they do provide context. And so I felt like they interrupted the rhythm of the story. Like, when I compare these to the epigraphs in something like the Stormlight Archive or Mistborn, those are so manageable. They're in very small chunks, 2-3 sentences at the most. Here we have not only giant block paragraph epigraphs, but there are 2 epigraphs before every single chapter. And so there's like some of them, it's a full page of text that's just the epigraphs. And I'm like, I want to get back to Mahit. I want to get back to 8 Antidote. I want to get back to 9 I want to get back to the story.
This is a smaller scale problem of how I felt about the book as a whole. I wanted to get back to 9 Hibiscus. I wanted to get back to the aliens. Get out of my way, 3 Seagrass. I don't care.
See, I mean, I was into all of it. But yeah, so the epigraphs themselves, as interesting as they were, as clever as they were probably my, like, the one stumbling block I have with this book. Like, I still gave this book 5 stars on Goodreads. This is, I've mentioned this before. This is one of the 2 best books I think I've read in 2021 so far, and we're recording this on April 30th. It's this and City of Blades. And
so good.
I gave both of those books 5 stars on Goodreads. If I were to, break it down into decimals, I'd say they're both around like a 4.8, maybe a 4.9. There were very small issues I had, but overall I loved both of the books. And for this book, the small issue I had was the way the epigraphs interrupted my cadence and acted like speed bumps for the pace of the story. So
I wouldn't even bother giving it a rating out of review, just because I really shouldn't be rating something that went so far over my head. It's not my place to rate something. It's not my place to judge Arcady Martin.
So you say this book went over your head.
So far over my head.
I have to imagine it went over your head, or you say it went over your head in a different way than, say, Kane's Law went over your head.
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah. There's a lot of linguistic charm and cheek and wit that I'm sure I'm not picking up on.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think that's because she's just too good of a linguist for me to totally grasp what she's trying to get across. I can't.
Gotcha. So it's not like you.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's not like you didn't grasp what happened in the book.
I know. As far as what happened in the story, I'm there. I have all my 3 favorite scenes. I'm there with you with your overview at the beginning. Totally fine. Summary, I'm fine. There's just a lot of aesthetic to appreciate from what I gather that I just didn't see.
And in comparison, Kane's Law, which
was just
if somebody in the world read that book and understood what happened in it the first time, I will shake your hand.
Yeah, you would have to,
because that book was just lunatic. Wild.
I don't even think Stover knew what he wrote the first time around.
Look, if and when I get to sit down and talk to that guy, one of the first questions out of my mouth is going to be like, "What the hell were you doing with that book, man?"
Yeah, really.
But no. So back to A Desolation Called Peace. Do you have any other style points, or do you want to get into characters?
I just decided to sum up this entire book as an analogy for me, the experience of this book. Okay. A gorgeous, beautiful desert. Expansive and pretty, but for me, completely empty. I had a mind-numbing trudge through this desert, and it was only and barely sustained by the occasional pool of sustenance that was the aliens and their recordings and the negotiations. And then this parasitic fungus arrived. That first big meeting with the aliens, with Mahit and 3 Seagrass, where they were trying to establish diplomacy. That was like an oasis in the middle of the desert for me. I was like, yes, beautiful, life-giving water, loving every minute of it. Then the fungus came to view, and we had this interlude from 6 Rainfall, and it was so creepy, and it was so well done and well written. I was like, oh my god, this entire book is going to change. There's going to be a common enemy. That's what I thought. I was like, oh, the aliens are going to recognize that fungus as some sort of galaxy-spanning threat, and it's like some sort of ancient enemy of theirs. Oh no, it's on the wait for the wheel, though. Oh god, it's going to get exciting. Oh, maybe not. Okay, so more politics.
So,
relationship problems, and then more politics.
Did you expect a plot turn like Illuminae when that fungus got onto wait for the
fungus when I almost said 6 Rainfall again. So this time I'm talking 20 Cicada, when he had it in the little glass tube. He was and they described the sound of it rattling around in there. I thought, oh no. Oh god, is this going to be... How hard was Drew laughing during Obsidia or during Gemina? No, that would have been during Illuminae. What am I saying? When they were all trapped on this ship full of this terrible alien virus, I was like, oh, is it really going to go that way? But I knew how much I love Illuminae. I was totally down for it, even if it was going to be the same. But then it was just more relationship problems and more politics. And then, the parasite's not that threatening. It's not aerosolized. There's not spores everywhere. Oh, and then we're going to jump into more politics, followed by more relationship problems. Awesome. And I know everyone's going to take an issue with this analogy of mine, treating it as like a desert, because for everybody, there's going to be stuff to pick up on depending on what you enjoy, what you're interested in. And I will come right out and admit that this, this is just beyond me. In the same way a geologist could dig in desert rock and show me all these striated layers and explain intricate and spectacular things that they can read out of all these little hints, that doesn't make me geologically inclined. I'm just seeing a bunch of fucking rock, and I'm falling asleep. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that's a reasonable analogy to make there.
Well, yeah. My last. This is my last style. It's not a style point. It's just a statistic here. I decided to look up in this book how many times each of the following words showed up. How frequent they are. The word politics, 28 times. The word political, 45 times. The word diplomat, 36 times. The word ambassador, 124 times. Right? So it was about every half page or so I was going, crap, this is more of what I don't like. How about, I'm coming off so fucking ignorant right now. I hate it. Don't take me seriously, anybody. Sorry?
You have the ebook?
I had the ebook right beside me.
Look up valence.
Valence? Oh, I think
I
once
want
or
to see
twice.
how many
I
times
recognize it because
valence.
I'm taking chemistry now. 1 second.
Yeah.
Yeah, here it is. All right. Sorry. So. All right. Word or picture, valence. ENCE. Go. We are looking at a grand total of 2 pages, so it's 5 on the first. So 6 times it's been used.
Okay. That wasn't as bad as I expected it to be.
Neither of these were as bad as I expected. I put down politics or political. I was expecting to see 494 times is what I was expecting to see. Oh my god. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's move into our character discussion here.
Oh, okay.
All right, let's start with Mahit and Three Seagrass.
Okay.
I know they're not your favorite.
No, what gave it away?
But again, to me, a very similar reaction to their relationship in the first book. They're adorable to me. But this is one of the reasons I love this book so much. That bittersweet ending. That heartbreaking decision. The knowledge that Mahit has that she does not belong in the city. She is not Tagsoundcloud2010tracks1053694651. She cannot do that. Not if she's going to retain her sanity, and not if she's going to, put into a relationship what Three Seagrass deserves. But she still loves her. And she still wants her. And she's now cut off from the one place she felt was home. And it's this, melancholy moment, in the hydroponics garden at the end there. And her saying, "You've asked me twice now. What I want is to feel like if you ask me a third time, I can say yes." That line was so good.
That was, yeah.
And so, there's all the diplomat stuff. There's all the linguist, the desire to be a poet. They both have this desire to be poets. And both, I think a lot of artists feel, there's a bit of imposter syndrome going on. They both feel like they don't belong. They can't call themselves poets. Yet they continually surprise each other with turns of phrase, poetic descriptions. Like, oh, maybe you are a poet. Maybe I can be a poet. I loved the tenderness of their relationship and the way their character arcs intertwined. It was so appropriate for Three Seagrass to stop at LaSalle Station and pick up Mahit. Three Seagrass, and this is why I'm talking about them together, because I feel like separate, they're not enough separate. They need to be together to be to reach their potential as characters. Not that they're not fully realized characters individually, because they are, but they're just so much better together. And that's why splitting them apart, but keeping that tenuous connection, writing letters at the end, I think was a stroke of brilliance.
I was really invested in the relationship in the first book. I remember that. Very specifically, I remember that. Mm-hmm. I think it was more on account of the curiosity of it. It was a what is this kind of relationship, which was exciting. It was new. For this book, it felt more like, what does this relationship mean? And mm-hmm. How are we going to treat this relationship in order of priority with all of our other problems? I wasn't as into it this time around. and as far as everything going on around the relationship, like particularly starting with Mahit, in her problems in book 1, I was more invested in those as well, because we had the secret of the Imago, and her this burgeoning relationship with Three Seagrass that was starting. In this book, these two were just kind of at each other's throats, like constantly, and a huge part of their narrative involves like their relationship problems. Not really stalling, but distracting in some ways away from the monumental events that they're finding themselves lucky enough to, or unlucky enough to be a part of. Like, my most frustrated moment with these two was during the video message response to 8 Antidote. You know, they were really frustrated at the time, and I totally understand that because I was frustrated at the time. They were in the middle of negotiations, and they got interrupted to go answer a email, for lack of a better term. Like, they were in overwhelming circumstances. They were in extraordinary conditions. They were interrupted in that crucial moment. But Mahit seemed physically incapable of considering the fact that of all the times to be letting your relationship problems get in the way of your professional duties, perhaps when you're in the middle of sending a message to the heir of the empire, the entire empire, about the potential threat from another alien race may not be the best time to start throwing petty jabs at your jilted lover. It frustrated me. And it wasn't just here for Mahit. The entire book, she is constantly flipping through every word she hears directed to or about her, from every mouth, particularly Three Seagrasses, primed and ready at all times, and just waiting for the loose possibility of interpreting something unflattering or condescending about her being a barbarian. Like, I'm sorry, she spends the entire book, every waking moment, seemingly waiting to be the victim all the time of someone else's prejudice. And I can't stand that kind of personality. So I did not like Mahit for this book either. So I'm being so fucking...
Okay.
Oh, God. I'm just like, I want to melt into my chair and just stop talking.
No, it's fine. I mean, this is why we do this, right? Like,
this is probably the book that you and I are at most at odds on that we've ever done in terms of...
It's very possible. It's very possible.
Three Seagrass. Can I bitch about Three Seagrass now, or do you want to respond to that first?
No, you can go.
Okay, thanks. I loved Three Seagrass in the first one. I remember just championing so much for her, and like in this book, she was frustrating to read from my perspective, and I got nothing in common with her. I don't like to travel myself. I'm not a very widely traveled person, nor do I have the desire to travel very far. Some areas in specific, but no, I don't like travel for just the sake of traveling. I'm male. I have no patience for poetry or symbolic language or the tools to understand them, really. I hate characters who are easily distracted when more important things are going on, and Three Seagrass is every goddamn one of those things made flesh. I can see why people love her. I can see that. I can see why. I just had to push myself through her viewpoints. A moment where she really frustrated me. For anybody that wants an example, it was near the beginning of this week's reading. It was in chapter 10, and I have the quote here. She was aware of the process of understanding what it was she was seeing. And then it goes on to explain what we already know as readers, that this here that she's seeing, this person is not 19 ads. But even though we already knew it, Three Seagrass realizes it's not 19 ads. We still have to sit through an entire paragraph of 3 reasons why Three Seagrass knows this isn't 19 ads. And one of those reasons, she decides halfway through to add exposition to one of those reasons as well. And I would like to point out that not only are we being beat over the head with this information that we already know, because Seagrass needs to compile a mental list of how she knows what we already know, but this is happening while they're discussing the aliens and what they responded to that first message and what's going to happen next. There's just so much of Three Seagrass's inner dialogue going on and interrupting everything that I want to get back to. Like, her attention is constantly wandering all the time.
For me, like, that was a brilliant scene for me, because that's a sterling example of showing instead of telling. She's telling us that Three Seagrass knows that it's not 19 ads. But in that, it's showing us so much about what's going on inside Three Seagrass. It's giving us a look at her internal landscape and showing us how unsettled she is in her current circumstances and how torn she is over the decision she's made and the fight that she just had, and I thought that was such a brilliant character moment.
It reads very genuine, and it reads very human, very character. Like I will even say it's great character work as well.
Yeah,
it's just I want to know what's happening, and she can't stop thinking about all these things that have nothing to do with what's going on right now, and it's interrupting my flow of what I want, and I'm being very selfish as a reader, and so I
don't think you're being selfish. It's just what it comes down to there is that the author is more concerned with exploring different conflicts than you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I will agree 100% with that. Let's see here. Oh, while they were being debriefed after their first conversation in the desert, 3 Seagrass has a thought when I think they're back talking with 9 Hibiscus again. When she was less dehydrated and less exhilarated, she would examine the political situation on the wait for the wheel with the attention it obviously deserved. And I read that going, oh God, oh no, oh please don't do that. Oh please don't do that. Don't put me through that.
She never really got a chance, so.
Yeah, that right there is just why I'm like, where's 8 Antidote? Where's 9 Hibiscus? Let's get back to the aliens.
How much? I'm curious. How much do you think it hurt 3 Seagrass as a character not having 12 Azalea around anymore?
Oh, Reed?
Do you think he was a big part of why you liked her so much in the first book? Was their friendship?
Yeah, I can see that. I didn't even consider that. That could very well be it. It was the fact that her relationship with Mahit was new, and we didn't know what it was or where it was going, so it felt exciting and fresh. And she had that long-standing relationship with 12 Azalea, and they knew each other so well that they already knew all the buttons to press on one another, and it was entertaining in that kind of its own way, right?
Yeah,
but with Mahit, she's just arguing all book long. This book,
like with 3 Seagrass in the first book, she is firmly rooted. She's operating off of a strong foundation. She's in her element. She's doing what she's been trained to do. She has people around her that she knows and trusts. And Mahit represents something new and exciting. In this book, 3 Seagrass is totally unmoored from everything that gave her that foundation. She's doing a new job that she's probably not really trained for. She's lost her what do you call it? Like her patron, so to speak, in 19 ads. She's lost her best friend, and that new relationship is moving out of its honeymoon phase, where it's not just like, oh, this is the new exciting thing. This is now like, this is something real that I need to figure out how to navigate. You know, like, so I wonder if losing that stability as like a home base where she can go be adventurous and then return to, you know, this rock. She's had that rock torn out from under her, and now she's completely untethered, and she can be flighty, or she has to be flighty in her interior landscape, which you don't like.
Yeah. Like, I don't want anybody to come out of this thinking that I don't think that she's a well-written character, or that she's not very human and very realized in her own right. It's not the kind of person that I would want to hang out with or listen to speaking constantly and about every little thing that comes to her mind when there's more important things going on. And I'm a simpler, more direct, blunt, tell me the facts, tell me what I need to know right now. Let's make something happen and see something cool. I don't like all of this beating around the bush.
Okay. Well, let's talk about 8 Antidote now.
Yes, let's talk about 8 Antidote.
Because to me, he is the gem of this book.
The gem of this book. Good. Okay. Justify that. I mean, who knows? Will I agree? Will I not? Am I going to be more contradictory?
A child's point of view in an adult book.
Yeah.
Is a daring thing to do. And she nailed it. He is so just like, you want to just like give this kid a hug. You want to help him. You want to help him navigate this adult world that he by necessity lives in.
Yes.
And you're so proud of him when he figures stuff out and he does things. The biggest surprise of this book when I first read it was 8 Antidote.
I wasn't surprised about it, how much I enjoyed 8 Antidote at all, because I remember thinking last book, I'm like, oh, this is going to be an important player in the future. I didn't realize that he was still going to be a child in the next one. And I liked it. I did like the juxtaposition with all of these far more mature viewpoints in and around him. You know, like, he was a strong part of my reason for finishing this book, to be entirely honest. I'll say I was most innately invested with him because, you know, he's the only young male in the story, right? And he's one of the more engaging characters because he's a future emperor, you know, and he has all these coming-of-age issues, and by that I mean the responsibility that's involved. He's not coming of age as an adult, but his responsibility is very much coming of age. I wasn't really particularly interested in his plot line, though, until the second half. And I will say that he's the one I'm most emotionally invested in, which I don't think will come as a surprise to anyone. You know, Martine is clearly taking care to treat this character in a very specific way.
Yeah.
And one of my 3 favorite scenes absolutely does include 8 Antidotes, and I don't think it's going to be what you think it is. So.
Interesting. And I just realized none of my 3 favorites include him, even though he may have been my favorite character. Well,
yeah.
My favorite point